പോളണ്ടിൽ എന്ത് സംഭവിച്ചു? പോളണ്ടിനെ പറ്റി നീ ഒരു അക്ഷരം മിണ്ടരുത്.
Hey, Catherine.
Hi, Harsha. How are you doing today?
I'm doing okay. How about yourself?
I'm good, and I'm ready to deal with our last segment on action films.
Yeah, possibly last segment, because we did discuss about doing some girls doing action. We are doing the new generation movies. So basically all of these are pretty much after 2008. They feature the newest generation of superstars in our Malayalam film industry. So you want to start off with Puthiya Mugham?
Yes.
Probably the oldest of this. Well, this is a Prithviraj star, and it is about a musician who is, they make a big point of emphasizing that he is a Brahmin musician. He's a Tamil Brahmin musician, and he's kind of this very soft sort of dude. And he goes to the big city in Kochi to go to college, and he's basically ragged, hazed by some of the students who are there in the college already, because Tamil Brahmins are supposed to have this very soft image, and so Prithviraj character kind of has that image, and he's like a musician, he's a man of peace, and so they pick on him. And the fact that he keeps getting picked on, he gets physically assaulted by these people, and he has to change into this action hero to get back at the people who were ragging him and causing problems for his family.
Well, and specifically, he's had some kind of childhood trauma. His brother was killed in a bus accident. And what does the doctor call it? Something like flashback syndrome?
Flashback phenomenon. I'm reading. I also don't remember. Yeah.
But it's any time that he's in a stressful situation, a violent situation like this, this violent side may come out. And that's sort of like the name of the film is what, like New Face or New Persona. So the really nice, quiet dude has to take on this tough persona to deal with what's going on at his college.
Yep. For me, this movie is most notable because it's what made Prithviraj a superstar, I think, in the Malayalam film industry. It did bonkers business. And this also stars probably, I think one of the pairs that Prithviraj is probably more popularly known for. Prithviraj and Priyamani did a lot of movies together at the beginning of his career. I think some of the draw of like a masala movie like this is that he gets to play this quiet boy next door, and then like he gets to play this action star, and you get the full range of your preferred star's talent. And I think this movie was set, because this movie came out in 2009, this was at a time when Telugu movies, especially with Allu Arjun and Mahesh Babu, were really doing good business in Kerala. And Malayalam movies of the 2000s, we've said it many times, weren't that great, and people weren't excited to go into the theaters. They kind of had the veneer of being family movies, but mostly they were movies that had, sort of lower level of humor that maybe women weren't as interested in. And so I think this movie came out at a time where Telugu movies were doing really good business in Kerala, and this was kind of a Malayalam movie trying to do the Telugu movie masala aspect. And you kind of see that Hindi movies at this time, with Dabang and Wanted and all those movies that Salman Khan was making, they were also trying to emulate Telugu movies as well. So this was a time when everybody was kind of trying to do their Telugu movie.
Yeah, and we've commented on that before too, that this is the place where Malayalam cinema gets closest to the other South industries, is in this big, massy action film.
Yep. I remember in the interviews of Prithviraj from that time, him actually, name-checking Allu Arjun and saying that, this is what I'm trying to do in this movie. And I think it had the benefit of Prithviraj putting on a ton of muscle, and he got to do his clean-shaven good boy for the ladies who like that, and then he got to do the badass. And I think I get the sense from this movie that despite the fact that this is a masala movie and, typically we don't think of action movies as for women, I really feel like in this era of Prithviraj, Puthiya Mugham, Tandoni, there are specific appeals to like a female gaze that we didn't get in a lot of the movies of the 2000s. And certainly we haven't seen, you and me haven't seen in our little series for action movies since Jane.
I would agree with you. I shared one of the songs with one of my back channel Twitter groups. And it's the one where he and Priyamani are somewhere in the Middle East and they're riding motorcycles and she's like grabbing his chest.
Yes.
And I kind of went, whoa. Because we don't see that a lot. We see a lot of the women who need to be rescued. The women are very much kind of an object for the hero and the villain to fight over. But she doesn't get much in the way of agency or personality. And at least with Anjana, Priyamani's character, I mean, she's supposed to be engaged to Sudhi, the villain in this piece, arranged by her family, specifically her father, who is a police officer who kind of protects Sudhi and his older brothers who were involved in the land mafia. But she agrees to the engagement, but she says, I want 4 years to go to school. And she says to Sudhi, I'm going to behave however I want at school. I want my freedom. That's kind of interesting too.
It's a bit of a plot device because then she gets to have feelings for Prithviraj. She does have a certain amount of agency. I guess even in a lot of masala movies, we don't see women with a ton of agency. Some in this series, we've kind of gone over a lot of movies where women and girls' agencies are specifically taken away. So that is refreshing to see.
Yeah, and I don't mean it to say go out and watch the film and expect female empowerment, because that's not the case here. It's a little step in a good direction.
And I will say the villain they cast in this movie, Bala, is also considered an attractive person. At least around that time, he was considered someone women liked watching. He was like a Tamil actor who married a Malayali. I remember people referring to him as Kerala's son-in-law and stuff like that. So he had kind of that image of being a bad guy that girls like watching as well.
Right at the beginning of the film, there's a song where Prithviraj is playing the drums, traditional and, modern Western drums. And the whole song is going on and I'm looking at it and it's Bala dancing with Priyamani. And he looks happy and cheerful and non-villain. And I was like, wait. The song, though, is her saying, like, I'm going to, as I said earlier, it's another emphasis on I'm going to have my freedom. This is what I'm going to do now, even if I'm dancing with you.
Yeah. And I think the other thing that stands out in this movie is Guinness Pakru, who Ajay Kumar is, I guess, the name he prefers now. He is a little actor, and he's a little person, and he's an actor. And he did a couple of movies with Prithviraj around this time, and I can't say I'm like 100% comfortable with his role in this. He kind of plays the comedy uncle in this movie, and the comedy uncle is, we've discussed before, it's laced with a certain amount of classism, casteism, and I think him being a person with a disability kind of adds on to the comedy uncle aspect of it in this movie, and that's kind of what you get with masala movies.
Well, and he did a lot in this period. He was doing in Tamil films as well, very similar kinds of roles, and I think this was the first time in an Indian film that I'd seen a little person who had even any kind of more substantial role than anything, even if some of it is comedy uncle. Mm-hmm. He's an actor who always makes me think of another actor that I was exposed to in France, a woman named Mimi Mati, who is a little person who got started doing not really stand-up comedy, but like with two other women that she went to school with, they would do these shows, comedy shows. And eventually she managed her own career into television. And in particular, she had a series created for her called Joséphine Ange Gardien, which is Guardian Angel. So, the idea was you don't have to be a particular size to be somebody's guardian angel. And I do find it interesting that you have this actor who has a place, at least at this time,
Yeah, in some ways, the Game of Thrones came out around 2011, I think. That's when it came out. And so Peter Dinklage suddenly became this huge star, and he was present in a lot of things at that time. You end up comparing how Peter Dinklage is used in Game of Thrones as an actor who's kind of pushing the story forward versus the kind of side roles that Ajay Kumar Guinness Pakru is getting in Malayalam cinema. And you do kind of feel like, okay, that maybe that's not the best roles that he could be doing. I know he's directed a movie where he is the lead. I'd love to see him in more substantial roles, like Salim Kumar has been able to transition from being a comedy actor to a serious actor. I hope there's more stuff for him. He has been working pretty consistently, though, since the 20-teens. And I wonder if part of the reason we don't see him in more commercial or mainstream movies is because Malayalam cinema is itself, since the 2000s, moved away into, if you can think of it, a more politically correct, less comedy uncle usage. So the kind of roles he used to do isn't as prominent in the most popular movies. But that doesn't mean that he as an actor can't do more serious roles.
I agree.
I hope we can get more roles for him out there because, he's always on Malayalam TV channels and TV shows where, stars come on and, they judge a music competition or a dance competition and stuff. And he always comes across as a very likable kind of guy. So...
yeah, and despite the comedy uncle-ness of some of his roles, I really do find him engaging on screen. So I agree with you. There's an actor I would like to see have more of the chances in our post-2010 world.
One of the things I actually do know him for is that there used to be this show on Kairali channel, I think, where if you've heard of the True Hollywood story, he would pick an old actor and tell us all about the gossip of their life and stuff. I think he did the voiceovers for those. And I remember my mom used to complain that they were making him voice misogynistic thoughts. And that's the only way he's being allowed to make money in this industry. And it made me really sad. So I hope that there are more roles for him and voiceover work that isn't about voicing misogynistic thoughts about famous women.
I agree.
And I think if you want to see Prithviraj becoming a superstar, this is a movie that you should check out because, it's not the best movie in the world. If you want to watch a Masala movie, you're probably better off watching a Telugu movie. This is a little bit of a down market version of a Telugu movie, but it is a nice milestone in Prithviraj's career.
Yeah, and I kind of kid a little bit that if I want my patriarchy and misogyny served up, it needs a side of, big song and dance numbers that have lots of shiny stuff and glitter. And you're going to get that in the Telugu industry.
Yes. And, it helps to have good-looking male stars. I think, when we were coming from the 90s, male stars weren't really there for the female gaze. I think in the 80s, in the 70s, you kind of tried it with Jan, and then in the 80s, you definitely had like Rahman and Shankar, who had that more appealing to women side, but they weren't doing action movies, obviously. I think at this point, you kind of start seeing Malayalam cinema actually like appealing to a female gaze, and I think I have more to say about this when we talk about style.
So would you like to go on to style, or would you like to do Asuravithu first?
Yeah, let's do Asuravithu since it comes next in the chronological order.
It definitely has a connection with Prithviraj and a film we've talked before about, which is Stop Violence.
It's by the same director, too.
Yes.
A.K. Sajan, I believe.
Yeah, and it's a film from 2012, so here we are slowly moving forward again. And it stars Asif Ali, and this is his first foray into a massy action role. He plays a character called Don Bosco. And again, a connection with the film we've just discussed because he's a soft-spoken religious. He's in a seminary studying to be a priest and eventually goes up against the gang who killed his father. Spoiler, spoiler, spoiler. His father is Prithviraj's character who died at the end of Stop Violence. We don't know that really initially, but his film opens with his mother Angel, played by Lena, leaving him with the priests because she's afraid if she raises him, it's a whole nature versus nurture kind of story. She's afraid that if she raises him, he will become a gangster like his father. She wants him to be raised by the priests so he will have a better chance of becoming a good person.
And I think when you talked about stop violence, you also mentioned the Satan and angel dichotomy they're setting up. This movie is fully about which parent this young man is going to follow in the path of. But to start off, I did not like this movie at all. It was a pain to get through.
Yeah.
And I don't know if Stop Violence was in the same way. I told you that I watched it when I was much younger, and I didn't know if I could sit through a rape movie. So you have to remind me if this extremely forced movie was also how Stop Violence was.
This was almost caricatural as an action film. I want to apologize because this is going to sound worse than it really is. But there were several moments where they were hitting all the right sort of action beats and tropes, but they were done so badly that I was laughing, like just spontaneously, because it was actually funny, but embarrassing funny.
Yes, anytime he was smoking or walking around, his outfits changed from the white seminarian outfits to his black suits, and then suddenly he's smoking and he's drinking, and it happens so quickly after he finds out who his father was. He gets the kernel of this idea that, the world is unfair and you have to use violence to fight it from being questioned by the police and being tortured by them. But his change in character happened so fast. And it's not, explained in the way in Puthiya Mugham where, I don't know if this is a real medical condition, but, the flashback phenomena. It's not explained like that. He just becomes a underworld kingpin so fast and has this extremely diverse group of men and women who are his gang members. And they suddenly start calling him Bhaiya out of the blue.
And one of the characters that he's in the seminary with who joins, the gang with him is Acid's son from Stop Violence.
Very conveniently, yes.
Very convenient.
Played by Maqbool Salmaan.
Oh, yes.
Dulquer's cousin, Mammootty's nephew.
And I knew he was in it, and I completely zapped. I sat down to write notes for all the films, and I sat down to sort of write a bit of a summary about this one, and I went, it's good versus evil. It really doesn't have that much of a plot. And I read an interview with Asif Ali, who, when his film Underground from a couple of years ago, which I haven't seen, but now I'm sort of prompted to go see it. It's another action film. And they asked him if there was any role he would like to try again. And he said it was this role from this film. And he said that he jumped at the opportunity to do something that he hadn't done before. Personally, I don't think it's his wheelhouse.
No.
I don't. But he said he felt bad that he didn't think he was good enough as an actor to do that role when he did it, but he jumped at it anyway because it was something he wanted to try. So I have to admire an actor who will say, I really want to try this. I want to do it, and then have enough, self-reflection to say, maybe I should have not done that, or maybe I should have waited. And maybe we should talk a little bit about Asif Ali, because one of the things that I've kind of started doing on Twitter is bringing up other actors than
our dear beloved Fahad Fazil.
I feel here I'm going to apologize again. We all love Fahad Fazil. There's nothing wrong with Fahad Fazil. We all should watch his films, every one of them. But there's also a whole bunch of really interesting actors in Malayalam cinema who are doing things that Fahad Fazil is maybe not doing, or they're forging their own careers. And I think Asif Ali for me is one of them. He works steadily. He's known. But he doesn't seem to be up there with the actors that people will always recommend to you.
I think his niche, if there is a niche he has, is something along like Kunjako Bobans, but obviously he didn't get that extremely stellar debut that Kunjako Boban had the benefit of. But Asif Ali made his debut with Vidhu, which was a very experimental film, and Shyama Prasad with Rima Kalingal. So he came into the film industry at a relatively young age, and I know people didn't consider him a great actor or anything, but he has been steadily working, and I think he's got enough charisma, he's got enough interest. Obviously he hasn't risen to the beloved status that Kunjako Bobman has because he just doesn't have as many years in the industry. But I think that he's definitely on track to get to that place. One of the jokes in Ustad Hotel at the end when he shows up as a celebrity guest, they ask him if he's Kunjako Bobman. So maybe other people in the industry feel that way too.
Well, and quite honestly, the minute you said it, I had been thinking Kunjako Boban. It's a similar kind of space. And I do appreciate that he takes the chance on quirkier and more experimental things. Like whether you like Kilipoi or not, here was an attempt to make a stoner film in the Malayalam industry. And I think he's quite funny in it. Within the limits of that genre of that film. He's doing it. What was the one?
Honeybee?
Oh, Honeybee. Honeybee is fun. Honeybee is fun. It's like throwaway. It's fun. But he can do those kinds of things, and maybe even if the film is not quite as prestigious, it's a light, fluffy space, and he works well in it.
Well, one of my favorite Malayalam movies is actually with Asif Ali, Orimuri, with Bhavana. He and Bhavana are really good friends, so they've done a couple of movies together, including Honeybee. And, I like their chemistry because it's clear that they're friends and they like each other on screen. I wish... he is kind of... All the movies I think of him that I enjoy him from are these smaller movies, Sunday Holiday, where he gets to play extremely boy next door roles, ordinary men. It's good that there's an actor who excels at playing those kind of roles in Malayalam film industry.
Yeah, and my argument always is there is space for more than one actor. And maybe Asif Ali and his films will not be your cup of tea. That's fine. Actually, maybe I will, when we do the show notes for this, maybe I will put in a couple of films that people can go look for if we've intrigued them enough to go and watch him.
I think you get a great sense of a normal, ordinary Malayali man or the circumstances of a family in many of his films. I think that's probably the most appealing thing about him. You look at Fahad Fazl's filmography, and he's done some of those. He's done Maheshinda Pradhigaram, even though it has a weird context, and Indian Pranayakatha, one of those movies. But I think Asif Ali's movies are chock full of ordinary lives of people in Kerala. It's the same way as Kunjako Bobans. And I think if you just pick any movie from his filmography, you'll often end up with one of those movies.
Not this one, though.
No, not this one. This is very bad. Don't watch this one.
Unless you want to watch it, to understand the context about which we are speaking at this moment.
It is, in some ways, a little bit of a good fit in his filmography because with Honeybee, he's done a little bit of these Kochi-centric movies where, people are talking in Kochi slang and it's all about the Kochi underworld where if you are a completionist, if anybody ever becomes a Asif Ali completionist, they can check this out.
Although every time, like in the second half, when he's in the gang and every time they complete a job, D Company stamp on the screen.
Yeah.
Bam!
And for people who know, D Company was Dawood Ibrahim's gang. And I was thinking to myself, why did he appropriate Dawood Ibrahim's name? He should have come up with his own name.
Well, and there was a film called D Company after this, I think.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. And he was in it, too, but it had nothing to do with Asuravithu. And at the end of this movie, when Asif Ali's character hands over the reins of D Company to Maqbool Salmaan, I think we were supposed to get a second part where Maqbool Salmaan is the lead. Obviously, this movie wasn't worth the paper was printed on, so they didn't make a sequel.
A third.
Oh, and this movie was, I forgot to mention this movie was incredibly anti-Semitic, which came out of nowhere because Indian culture and Indian movies don't have the context of anti-Semitism that, that is maybe known in the West and in the Middle East. Jewish people don't have as much of a presence in Indian life, but also Jewish people were famously well received by and had a good status. They weren't persecuted in the subcontinent. So for no reason, this movie villains are extremely comically Jewish. They talk about going back to Israel, and then they're doing cocaine. The girl has, and the guys have curly hair, but in a way that's normal for most Malayalis. We have very typically curly hair, but it seems in this movie their curly hair is kind of supposed to indicate their Jewishness.
I'm glad you mentioned it because so much about this film is forgettable, and yet that is something you should not forget. Because I was staring at the screen going, what is this?
I don't even know where this is coming from because it's not part of there's a lot of things that is part of Malayali culture. It's casteism, colorism, all sorts of prejudices, misogyny, but anti-Jewish prejudice is not one of them. In fact, in any movies that we see Jewish people come up, they're often, think of them as how Native Americans are treated in a type of Hollywood movie. They're considered noble. They're considered in the past. They're not considered people who are part of present-day Kerala because a lot of people have gone to Israel since the founding of Israel. So the fact that they have this old man played by Vijay Raghavan with like this yellowing teeth and extremely shabby looking beard, it's like he took a Disney villain. A lot of Disney villains supposedly are anti-Semitic stereotypes, and put this into a Malayalam movie. And I was completely thrown by where it came from.
It was very jarring and offensive.
Yes, absolutely.
That goes without saying. So completionists only, with lots of warnings about this film. Yeah. So that brings us to the last film we're going to talk about today. Style, directed by Binu.
I think the credits said Binu S, so you could say
Binu S. Thank you. Okay, I'm going to try the summary. So we have Unni Mukundan, who plays Tom. He's an automobile garage mechanic. He falls in love with a woman named Dia, sort of typical action masala film, follows her everywhere. And there's this sort of series of meetings where he's waiting for a bus, but he knows she drives by. And on one of these moments where he's waiting for a bus, she's distracted and she hits the Ford Mustang of Edgar, played by Tovino Thomas. Edgar is our villain, and he is not happy at having his beloved Ford Mustang rear-ended, and he goes up to her car and smacks her windscreen, and it dissolves into a bazillion pieces. Tom sees this, comes running, beats Edgar up, and throws him through the windscreen of his beloved Mustang. And that gives us the tension between hero and our villain.
And from that summary, you guys can figure out that this movie is very low stakes and a lot of fun. Of this set, this was the most fun for me, with the caveat that Unni Mukundan has been accused of sexual assault. So, how you feel about him might depend on how comfortable you feel with that. I do believe the woman who's made the accusations. At the same time, I will say that I have found him to be a pleasant enough presence in the Malayalam cinema I have seen him in, and in this movie, he does a commendable job playing the fun masala hero. The movie spends a lot of time objectifying him.
Yeah, and if there is anyone who seems to be the most natural in this action space, it's him. I haven't seen him in a lot of films, but this is a space that he seems to occupy really well and really naturally.
And he's got the physicality for it. I really think he was trying to do something like creating a new generation Suresh Gopi career. I do think there was specific, references that people were making at the time that he was coming up, that he could do something like that. He's called Asif Ali in Vikramadityan, and he's called Asif Ali in this movie. And there's a random creep who keeps feeling up his biceps and his thighs and his abs on the bus, kind of treating him like a woman. There's a lot of this movie that's been objectifying him. And actually, the fact that he keeps following this girl, they actually flip it around because she's been kind of following him and taking pictures of him too. And she was hoping he would talk to her.
Yeah, that was a nice touch. Because for the most part, again, I keep coming back to how these masala action films have a certain style, and they called the film style. Hello, here it is on a platter, and they do some of the exact same tropes that you're going to see in every film we've talked about, but they do some flipping of it, and they do have this aspect of the female gaze, which we don't see a lot of in these action films. At least the ones that we've looked at. And I was trying to decide if I was going to feel guilty about enjoying his film because of these accusations. I really hope that's a situation that can be resolved and learned from, because I don't necessarily, I'm trying to say it in a way that doesn't sound offensive. I don't necessarily think things like this need to kill a career. I think people need to take a step back from their career, and they need to honestly resolve the situation. They have to honestly own up to their actions, honestly apologize, honestly make change. And I don't know if I went, after you mentioned it to me, because I hadn't heard about it, I went searching, and the last I saw was from like two years ago, where they had stayed the case. So I don't know if there's been any resolution. So I'm a little bit uncomfortable recommending the film when we're in a space where we don't have any resolution of that situation.
I don't know too much about the Indian Penal Code or how the courts work to see if there could have been an out-of-court settlement. Would it have been recorded in public records if that were the case? I don't know. For people who don't know, maybe I can explain what the news reports have said was that there was a female scriptwriter who went to narrate a story at Unni Mukundan's flat, and he tried to initiate some sort of sexual contact. Maybe it isn't clear to me if he forced her to stay there. It doesn't seem like she said that she was raped, but it seems that he made a move in a professional context that was not appropriate. And we come back to talking about why are these meetings happening in flats? Why aren't they happening in offices? Why are they happening in hotel rooms? These are the things that we have talked about from the Me Too movement. It's completely inappropriate.
Yeah.
And yet, women who want to make it in the industry have to go to hotel rooms and flats where they probably feel unsafe, I as a woman would, and have to spend time with men they don't know very well. That's completely unfair, and it shouldn't be the standard.
Absolutely. And I think that's part of what I'm trying to say here. There has to be responsibility and accountability, and things have to change.
Yeah.
Some people's actions are so egregious that, for me, if their careers, I hate to use the word cancel, but if their careers are not stopped, my choice is I'm not engaging with your content. We have another hashtag problematic actor that neither of us will watch. So what I'm doing here is sitting on a fence with respect to Unni Mukundan and his career.
Yeah.
But the bottom line is, he is going to have to be held responsible for his actions. And as an industry, but every time we say this should be the wake-up call to change how things are done and change how women get to be in this space, and we talk about it for a little bit and then it doesn't happen.
And the sad thing is, what it's going to happen is that actors are not going to listen to stories from female writers rather than saying, hey, maybe I should just take this meeting in an office with other people present who can vouch for what happened.
Yeah, I guess for you and I, that seems really obvious.
Exactly. Because most human beings work in an office. Yes, now we all work from home, but it doesn't mean that if I needed to take a meeting, I wouldn't do it over Zoom, and I wouldn't do it at an office if need be. There is something about, narrating a script that's very personal, they have to act out some of these characters, and maybe that's not great over Zoom. That's fine. But then you do it in an office. You do it in a space where other people can vouch for what you are doing.
Yeah, absolutely.
I don't know if Unni Mukundan has the power to change that, but certainly he should do better next time.
Well, yeah. And again, if we had seen some kind of accountability rather than just filing a countersuit, because that is one of the things that happened. And then it just sort of, as far as I can see I don't read Malayalam, so maybe there are news articles since, 2019. But it does seem to be a case that kind of flared up and disappeared into a void, and that has to stop too.
Yeah.
Boy, we dumped all over his film.
No, I mean, I enjoyed this film, and, this was a time when Tovino Thomas hadn't quite become the star he is today. So Unni Mukundan was actually probably the bigger name in this movie. I think they're both around the same age, came into the industry around the same time. But I think Unni Mukundan had the benefit of having Mammootty as a supporter of his. And so he got to be the hero in this. Tovino Thomas gets to be an extremely hammy villain who is obsessed with his muscle car. And the stakes are very low, as I said.
Yeah. And every time he lights up a cigar, there's like the cigar and the smoke, and he blows out the smoke. Style, baby, style.
Exactly. And then I kept flashing back to Asuravithu going, this is what they were trying to do in Asuravithu. But they didn't have the tongue-in-cheekness of this movie. This movie is very self-aware about what it is doing. And I think that always makes a difference. Part of postmodernism, as cultures move into that postmodern art period, self-awareness is a huge aspect of it. Otherwise, it feels insincere to us as the audience.
Asuravithu does exactly the same things, the exact same kind of tropes and beats, and it really doesn't work there. And in style, it works perfectly. And as you say, it's because they have kind of a tongue-in-cheek self-awareness about what they're doing and putting it out there. But they're also turning the tropes a little bit.
Yeah, in the movie, at the beginning, when Unni Mukundan's character Tom is talking about Dia, he says she looks like a heroine from a Telugu movie, which makes sense because she's North Indian. She's so pale, and obviously all the Telugu heroines are North Indians who are so pale and don't look anything like. I mean, South Indians don't look at her and go, hey, that's one of us. Not that there aren't South Indians that are extremely pale. It's not an aesthetic that is as common in Kerala. The fact that they make that reference, obviously they're saying, yeah, I know, we brought in a Bombay model to do this and we are aware of what we're doing. Her dubbing is terrible. She's just moving her mouth. Obviously somebody else has dubbed for her. And the other tongue-in-cheek thing is, he's Tom and his little brother is Jerry.
Jerry.
And it would be corny if I knew they weren't trying to be corny.
Well, and there are films where characters are called that, and you roll your eyes and you go, oh my God. And I mean, I rolled my eyes here, but I laughed legitimately. I thought this is so funny. And the brother is like, he says it's a 7 years or something different.
15 years.
15 years.
And Unni Mukundan keeps reminding him that he was a mistake his parents made while he went on vacation to his uncle's. So he shouldn't really, be as full of himself, the little kid, as he is. He's a really little kid. And he kind of uses his little brother to get with Dia.
Well, but he also allows his little brother to take his own revenge.
Yeah.
Because near the end, spoiler. Why do I keep zapping on Tovino Thomas's character's name?
Edgar.
Because
it's a name that nobody has. I mean, I actually do know people who have it, but they're usually Hispanic. And it's a much more common Hispanic name in America and Canada, I assume.
But Edgar at one point beats Jerry with a rod. So, near the end, his brother Jerry gets the rod and whaps Tovino Thomas with it. The little brother gets to deliver a beating as well. Whatever you want to think about that morally. Anyway, he gets his own revenge.
It's an action movie. We have to accept that people beating each other up is part of...
Otherwise, why are we here?
Yeah. In the moral universe of action movies, we think people settling conflict by beating each other up is fine.
Violence solves nothing. Stop violence.
Except in action movies.
Yeah, it was interesting for me to see Tovino Thomas and remember that period where Unni Mukundan was the bigger thing.
One of the criticisms that Unni Mukundan used to face was that he's not a very good actor. And probably Tovino Thomas got the benefit of being considered a better actor. To be honest, when I've seen Unni Mukundan in some of the movies I like of him, and I actually don't mind him in these kind of roles where he plays like this hemming and hawing muscled guy who everybody keeps complimenting on his handsomeness or like his muscles. He does the same thing in Vikramaditya, and he kind of does the same thing in a movie I really, really liked. It is called Orumurai Vandu Partaya, he plays this guy who is haunted by a ghost. He kind of plays this like hemming and hawing, shy, handsome guy. He does a pretty good job. I don't think he has much range.
No, but then that comes down to similar to what we were talking about Asif Ali. Like, you have a zone, you have a lane, and you can be good in that lane, and there's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah.
So I hope he can make amends and not be sort of hashtag slightly problematic, and we can wholeheartedly enjoy what he does. I hope that happens, and I hope there are more films like Style in there, because it was fun.
Yeah. Yeah, so the thing I was going to say is that if he's going to go in the lane of Suresh Gopi of sorts, Suresh Gopi had, prior to becoming an action hero, proved himself as an actor. And, since he's proved himself as an actor, Suresh Gopi is a good actor all around, even though what we know of him is those policeman roles. So I don't know. I think Unni Mukundan's career is really taking off, partly because I'm sure of these allegations, and partly because I think Malayalam Salmaan doesn't quite know what to do with him. He's played bit roles in Telugu films and in Tamil films, and they seem to be able to use him. So I hope, maybe in those industries, maybe he gets a chance to prove that, he's growing as an actor at some point.
But bottom line, Style is actually kind of fun.
Style is fun. Yeah, Style has style.
We've spent sort of 3 episodes spanning, the two big stars, Mammootty and Mohanlal, and their space in this action film. And we looked at people like Jayan and Suresh Gopi, and now we've had a look at this younger generation. I'm wondering if we have any sort of final thoughts about what we've seen over 3 episodes.
For actors for whom action is just part of their bigger repertoire, like Mammootty and Mohanlal, we've seen Mohanlal do some fun action movies, but to be honest, we came away thinking that Irubadam Nutande was much more of a gangster film than it was an action movie, and that a lot of the things that pushed that movie forward were in the dialogue. Those movies don't necessarily stick out in their filmography. They're not the ones that people tend to be drawn to when they talk about these actors. But for people like Jayan and Suresh Gopi and Unni Mukundan and Prithviraj, actually, we can say that he is a much stronger action star than he is in many of the other genres he's done. He tends to play these brooding cops a lot. And those films are probably where they're most comfortable in, that they're the ones that we think of the most. And for Malayalam movies, action movies are still a pretty small genre, and we don't have a very strong action choreography industry in India, and I really want that to change.
Thanks for listening to the Polandine Patti podcast.
If you like what you're hearing, remember to come back for our next episode and share our podcast with your friends.
If you'd like to connect with us, you can email us at polandinepatti@gmail.com or reach out to us on our Twitter feed @polandinepatti. See you next time.